Good evening, everyone. My name is Benjamin, and welcome to our first uh, our first little look into 2024, at least with my presidential election model. I figure since inauguration is Wednesday, I should get this up as soon as possible, and that way I have the most complete data set for when this model is put up to the test in 2024. It did surprisingly well in this past election, a lot better than I would have anticipated it doing. Obviously, it did get some things wrong. There's no, but it was the first time I used it, and it wasn't built to deal with the pandemic nor the uniqueness of some of the state races. But I think it did its job well enough to use it as kind of a guideline going forward. I've tweaked a few things, but the rest I've switched over to be Joe Biden, not Donald Trump. Now, this is what my model is showing with everything factored in. So that's incumbency advantage. I don't have the economics, the economic advantage calculated yet or added in, simply because I think it's unfair to be factoring that in when Biden's number one, not president, and number two, you can make the argument that it's still the Trump economy, which it is. The other thing is we've also got home state advantages calculated for both presidential and vice presidential, not on the Republican side just yet, but when that happens, that'll be included. I am also working on the assumption that Biden makes it all 4 years and runs for re-election, because I think it is wrong to assume otherwise. Any other things? A like, a comment, and a subscription would be greatly appreciated, as well as a subscription on Patreon. All links that I have or going to be advertising are in the description, of course. And there's also a mock government that I am trying to run, and a link to that is going to be in the description as well. Now, moving on to look at the map, there's a few things we can definitely see. There's a lot of, I think it's not unreasonable to look at this and say, well, the Sun Belt is and the Southeast Corridor are becoming more favorable to the Democrats, and the Rust Belt is becoming more favorable to the Republicans. There are a few areas where I still currently disagree. Missouri, Indiana, Alabama, I don't really consider those to be competitive going forward. I'd even be willing to say that Montana probably won't be that competitive. But then again, that shade is more to describe the 10 to 15 range when referring to my model. Alaska is becoming competitive, and that's kind of a recent trend. We'll see if that holds. It may not. Texas, of course, is definitely going to be on the target for Democrats in 24. We'll see whether or not that is something that flips, but I'm still a little bit skeptical, given the Republican Party was able to still win in a year where Texas probably had 80-ish% turnout, maybe even 85 or 86% turnout. Still able to win by 600,000 votes, or about 5-ish%, 5 or 6%. I forget exactly what it was. Now they didn't quite do what they did in Florida, which was extremely impressive. But then again, Florida has been a very high propensity voting state anyway. But what you see is basically that it shouldn't be avoided that Biden should be reasonably considered the favorite going into 2024. It's going to be very difficult to beat him because he is going to be an incumbent, and we're almost certainly not going to have a pandemic. We're almost certainly not going to have a bad or weak economy. So if I was a betting man, I would go and say that yes, Biden will be the favorite going into 2024. If we look at Nebraska, you'll notice one vote isn't highlighted, and I probably should actually do that for both Maine's districts as well as the rest of Nebraska's districts. And the reason why is because those electoral votes are based pretty much completely on the ability, or based completely on redistricting. Nebraska, the state legislature controls it, so it's fairly likely that the Republicans are going to gerrymander out the second so that it can't flip in a presidential election, except in a complete and utter landslide. And Maine, an independent / bipartisan commission, controls redistricting, and it's probably going to be a fairly competitive map in that regard. So I'm not sure that anything is going to change in Maine regarding the congressional district splits. Now, I wanted to see what the model would be with everything taken off except for the polling inputs that have been put in. And that includes Biden's approval rating as of the 2020 exit polls. And yeah, there's some areas that I disagree with, and I think my model kind of handles partisanship, maybe handles it a bit too much when there are no other data points, or data points are very sparse. For example, the model's only polling input so far the 2020 election. And that had some really weird stuff. But also when you take off everything but the polling, you take off the effectively net 7% swing towards Biden that incumbency gives him, that actually has the Republican winning the national vote by about 1%. Will that happen? Almost certainly not. Unless the Republicans put up an extremely strong candidate, Biden flops in the debates completely, and the economy crashes or the pandemic lasts well into 2023. Something like that. If that happened, then I could see a map like this happening. But this is just, I wanted to see if it was calibrated and taking everything in the way I expected it to be taking it in. And honestly, with a 1% Republican victory, I would agree with most of this except for New York, Washington, Oregon, Colorado, New Mexico, and Virginia. I have some slight disagreements with Illinois, but the rest of it, I really don't think that's too much to disagree with, honestly. But anyway, for right now, consider this to be what the model is putting out. So I want to thank everybody for watching. I hope you do enjoy. I'll see y'all next time. Take it easy. Have a very nice evening. Bye-bye.